A Cause for Causality, Part 2. The Wicked World Continues. If you ran across Part 1 of this, it was about coming across this Medium article that Guion Weck wrote that had this model in it that I thought would make a marvelous vehicle for doing an unfolding of a story with a voiceover. And it was initially done in Vensim, so I migrated it to Kumu and realized that there's a whole bunch of the loops missing that I wanted to use to do the unfolding with. So I re-implemented this in Cauzality, because Cauzality defines the loops for me. And then the question was to figure out where to start and which loops to identify in which order. Now, thankfully, Guion sent me the original article that was part of this work that was done in 2020, and I then found out that it was about understanding the adequate housing in Kenya, and they said that at that point there was a 2 million unit shortage on housing, and the deficit was growing at 200,000 units a year, which is a pretty big problem to figure out how to deal with. Nonetheless, in persisting at what I was trying to figure out, I understood that this was the place to start in terms of households inside of adequate housing, and working through the list of loops. I could go ahead and figure out that what was part of this loop and put that in the beginning, and then figure out where this loop was, so that I identified these loops one at a time, building out from the place that I started, which was going quite well, and I migrated that back to Kumu. The question being, well, if you already figured out the loops in Cauzality, why do you want to put it in Kumu? Well, actually, there are multiple stories to tell from this model, depending upon who you are and what you're trying to get across, so that you might tell the story from a socioeconomic perspective, from a financing home ownership perspective, from a housing market perspective, or from a development perspective. So you could actually unfold this model in multiple different ways. But in terms of the socioeconomic effects that I started from, it began to work out quite well, so that here's the beginning and the next one and the next one. And it just continued to unfold in a meaningful manner. And then it dawned on me that what this model is it's a great study on how to deal with the symptoms of a problem. Building housing, low-cost housing for the people of Kenya is akin to building shelters for homeless people. You get, when you build shelters for homeless people, you get them off the street, but they're still homeless. You haven't solved the homelessness problem. You've simply masked it. You've created a shifting the burden structure so that you're not painfully aware of the extent of the homelessness problem. As was demonstrated long ago, the more that you treat the symptoms of a problem, typically the worse that the problem actually becomes over time. So that the more that you build shelters for homeless people, the more homeless people will migrate to that city, and the more homeless shelters that you will need. So the situation the model developed to address how to deal with the symptom has nothing to do with the problem of where all of the homeless people, all of the people needing low-cost housing are coming from. So it won't solve the problem. The problem will just continue to get worse the more intently that they work on addressing the symptoms. So I decided at that point that I sort of figured out how to go about doing this to the extent that I wanted to understand it, and I'm just going to leave it there as an exercise in understanding. The thing that came out of this, which ended up being an aha moment was the identification of the utility of having the loops actually color-coded so that I had an immediate sense of which loops were supporting the intent, which ones were of caution, and which ones are of concern. And I put that in about an update on the Kumu template version 5, which I think went out yesterday or this morning or whatever. So hope you found this of some interest, and this is sort of the end of this project. Like many projects over time, they just come to a different conclusion than you expected them to. So I'll see you in another musing soon. Take care. Bye.